Adobe did something most companies only dream about. It turned creative work into a bill that never stopped. For years, Photoshop felt like buying limited Jordans. Painful once, but yours forever. Then the deal changed. Creative Suite became Creative Cloud. Ownership became access. Designers, editors, photographers, students, and freelancers were suddenly renting the tools their careers depended on. But the monthly price was not the real trap. The real shock came when people tried to leave and discovered how deeply the system had wrapped around their work. Stay with me, because this story gets darker faster than anyone expected. And the scariest part? Adobe did not force the world to accept subscriptions by accident. It showed companies exactly how profitable that model could become. To understand why people were angry, you have to understand how powerful Adobe already was. Photoshop was not just software. It became a verb. Illustrator shaped logos. Premiere Pro edited videos. After Effects built motion graphics. InDesign laid out magazines, brochures, and brand material. If you worked in a serious creative job, Adobe was not just popular. It was the room everyone had to walk into. That gave Adobe something stronger than customer love. It gave Adobe dependency. A small agency in Chicago might have 10 years of client files saved in Adobe formats. A wedding photographer in Texas might have old Lightroom catalogs, presets, and edited images. A YouTuber in California might have Premiere projects, title packs, templates, and half-finished videos waiting for approval. These were not random files. They were businesses, deadlines, invoices, client relationships, rent money. So when Adobe moved toward subscriptions, users were not simply choosing between monthly and one-time payment. They were choosing between paying Adobe or disturbing the entire workflow their careers depended on. And that is where the trap began. Because a good subscription adds convenience. A bad one makes leaving feel dangerous. Before Creative Cloud became the main path, Adobe used the traditional license model. You paid upfront. You installed the program. You upgraded when you wanted. Maybe you skipped one version. Maybe you kept using an older copy because it still worked. That was normal. That was ownership. From Adobe's side, though, ownership had a problem. Customers did not always upgrade. A designer who paid once could avoid Adobe's cash register for years. That made revenue less predictable. Big product launches created big sales. Then things slowed again. Wall Street does not love waiting around for people to decide they feel like upgrading. Investors love predictable money. Monthly money. Money that arrives like rent. So Adobe looked at its massive creative ecosystem and saw a better machine. Not sell once. Charge again and again. In 2013, Adobe confirmed that future Creative Suite versions would move to Creative Cloud instead of the old Perpetual license path. No Creative Suite 7. No traditional upgrade cycle. The old deal was over. But Adobe did not present it as the end of ownership. It presented it as progress. Creative Cloud sounded modern. Continuous updates. Cloud storage. Access to many apps. Better collaboration. Less upfront pain. And to be fair, for some users, it did make sense. If you were a professional using several Adobe apps every day, paying monthly could feel like a business expense. If you were new, it was easier than dropping thousands of dollars at once. But here is the question. If the subscription was so good, why did so many people feel like they had no real choice? That question matters because Adobe was not just adding a new option. It was making subscription the future. Before, Adobe had to persuade you to buy the next version. After, you had to keep paying to stay inside the system. And once your files, habits, templates, clients, and daily workflow were built around Adobe, leaving was no longer a simple decision. It was like trying to change the engine of a car while still driving on the highway. That is the difference between selling a tool and controlling access. And financially, the strategy worked. Adobe's revenue grew into a subscription-driven machine. In fiscal 2025, Adobe reported $23.77 billion in revenue and $25.20 billion in annualized recurring revenue. In Q1 fiscal 2026, Adobe reported record quarterly revenue of $6.40 billion. So yes, the backlash was loud. But the payments were louder. That is why the story becomes uncomfortable. Adobe's model did not fail because people complained. It succeeded while people complained. And other companies noticed. If Adobe could turn creative software into rent, what else could become rent? Music already had. Movies already had. Cloud storage did. Productivity apps did. Even car companies started testing subscriptions for features that used to feel built in. Somewhere, a product manager probably looked at a heated seat button and thought, what if warmth had a billing cycle? That is not innovation. That is a villain origin story with leather trim. But the real twist came when leaving Adobe became part of the controversy. For years, customers complained about confusing plans, early termination fees, and cancellation friction. Then, in June 2024, the FTC announced action against Adobe and two executives, alleging that Adobe hid early termination fees and made cancellation difficult. In March 2026, the Justice Department announced a proposed order in which Adobe would pay $75 million in civil penalties and provide $75 million in free services to resolve alleged violations. Adobe denied wrongdoing, which is important to say clearly, but the message from regulators was impossible to ignore. The subscription model was no longer just a clever business strategy. It had become a consumer protection story. And once a company becomes the symbol of easy to join, hard to leave, every cancellation screen starts looking like evidence. But here is the part Adobe may not have planned. The same model that made Adobe richer also made alternatives more attractive. When people feel trapped, they look for exits. Canva became one of those exits. It did not try to beat Photoshop at every professional feature. It made design simple, fast, and usable for small businesses, students, marketers, teachers, nonprofits, and everyday creators. By 2025, Canva said it had 260 million monthly users and $3.5 billion in revenue. That is not a cute side app. That is a giant standing outside Adobe's castle with a drag-and-drop smile. Then Canva acquired Affinity, a suite many creatives liked because it offered serious tools without the same subscription pressure. Figma became another threat. Adobe tried to buy Figma in a deal valued around $20 billion, but the companies ended the deal in December 2023 after regulatory pressure made approval unlikely. Think about that. Adobe built the castle. Then the market built doors. So what is the truth? Adobe did not single-handedly trap the entire world inside subscriptions. But it proved something powerful. If the product is important enough, the files are locked deep enough, and switching feels painful enough, people may keep paying even when they hate the model. That is the business lesson. The human lesson is simpler. People do not hate paying for value. They hate feeling cornered. A good subscription feels like convenience. A bad one feels like a cage with a free trial. And that is why Adobe's story matters far beyond Photoshop. Today, almost every company wants recurring revenue. Apps, storage, editing tools, AI features, streaming, fitness, car features, even things that used to come with the product. The question is no longer, can I afford one subscription? The question is, how many tiny monthly payments can one life survive? Adobe is still powerful. Its tools are still used everywhere. But younger creators do not worship industry standard the way older professionals did. They care about speed, price, simplicity, and whether the tool helps them publish before the algorithm forgets they exist. Adobe turned software into rent. But now customers have more doors, regulators are watching, and competitors are building faster exits. And now AI makes the pressure even stronger. Adobe is adding generative tools, credit systems, and higher value plans into the same subscription world. For some creators, that is useful. For others, it raises the same old fear in a new costume. Will tomorrow's creativity belong to the person making the work, or to the platform charging access to the tools? That question is not going away. It is getting louder every year right now. Adobe may survive for decades, but trust is harder to rebuild than revenue. Once people realize they are renting the future, will they ever feel free again? Before your next monthly bill arrives, ask yourself, are you buying value or renting a locked door? Like and subscribe for more videos.